Welcome to Investor Relations, the bottom line, where my team and I provide insights on how you can attract and retain great investors.
Welcome, Amit. So considering it's a new year, what are some of the investor trends currently shaping the industry?
The key trend I've been noticing, and you can't really call it a trend, I think it's a movement. It's almost a revolution, so to speak, and that's global, and that comes down to ESG. Investors of all levels are very curious as to what is this company doing when it comes to sustainability. Are they actually changing and updating their policies and their processes? And I think that has a lot to do with the bigger picture, the more macro movement moving towards renewable energy, moving towards cleaner energy. Everything about, at least with what I'm consuming, is talking about what's happening with EVs, how the world's moving towards hydrogen. But I think overall, where it's safe to say that investors and people at large are very much concerned about our planet and looking after it. And this is where I think in the past few years, especially past COVID, it's really pushed everyone to think more and more about what environmental impact does my investment have. So I think that's the key aspect. Now, the second key aspect, and I'm not going to call it a trend, but it is a trend, is that investors are becoming more vocal about the lack of communication from companies they've invested in or from companies they're thinking about investing in. And after all these years, communication is still a huge factor. It makes and breaks civilization. So I'm definitely noticing companies of all sizes making more of an effort to communicate with potential and existing investors, keep them updated, and communicate how they are addressing the market and what's going on globally, not just in the local markets, but also globally, and how that impacts them and their industries, and how they're thinking about overcoming challenges posed by macro factors.
So how do you think companies can stay ahead of the game and align with these investor trends?
I think the key aspects companies need to remember, acknowledge, and integrate into their investor relations strategies is that investors are cautious. They're cautious about what they're going to invest in, how that's going to impact the community, their portfolio, planet at large, as we spoke about. And usually that all comes down to clarity. So attracting potential investors and retaining current investors in your company boils down to clear communication, regular communication, and transparency. I think to a certain degree, I understand, not everything can be laid out there, but clear, transparent communication, I would say, is by far the key aspect and the key trend movement that companies really need to adapt and bring to the center of their investor relations approach.
Okay, thanks, Amit. So what are some of the potential benefits of aligning with these investor trends?
One of the key benefits is access to more capital. The more investors you attract and the more investors you retain, there's more capital that you potentially can tap into as a company that's growing and wanting to expand. The next benefit is helping current and potential investors understand how you're aligned with where the world's going when it comes to ESG, when it comes to sustainability. What is the impact that you're having, not just to the investors and the stakeholders, but also to the local areas and the communities that your companies exist in? And what this does is that it builds a good, robust, genuine brand reputation. It's very easy, I think, in the past 5 to 10 years to see brands and hear about brands popping up overnight and what seems to be becoming successful overnight. But more often than not, when a robust, sticky investor is looking at an investment, they're thinking 5 years, 10 years down the track. And it does take time to build a genuinely positive brand. And when I say positive brand, I'm not just saying, I don't just mean that people are talking positively about your brand, but a brand that aligns and connects with people at an emotional level, with their values, what they stand for, and who they are. I mean, that's what brands are all about. If it's done well, you will attract the target market that you're aiming for. I mean, take when it comes down to, simply put, the brands that people choose for cars, for clothes, for the even the suburbs that people live in is technically a brand that they choose, and the suburb then attracts those specific people to that area to come and live there. So companies and brands aren't much different. It comes down to really genuinely sticking to those brand values that you have come up with, updating your brand vision as you need, but more often than not, embedding your key brand messages into your investor relations strategy. Because at the end of the day, it is people that are investing in you because they believe in you, your management, your team, your services, your products, and the greater good that you'll be achieving as a company. And the third aspect that is the most important is that with this genuinely robust brand reputation that you're building on a regular basis, because brand building is a never-ending story, right? Like, it's a constant thing that you have to build on, you have to work on, and you have to grow. I mean, and a great case is the Coca-Colas, right? Like, they've been around for forever, but you still see them building their brands. You still see them communicating their message and their values. So it's the same thing when it comes to companies, regardless of what industry that they stay in. Brand building is where it's at, and investor relations is a strong part of it. The result of everything I've just said is you're attracting a newer generation. You're attracting a new mindset, a new way of thinking, which is the future of our nation, so to speak.
Like, so overall, I mean, what are the top 3 things that companies should focus on for investor engagement?
The first thing will be developing a clear message, and embedding that through all the different brand channels that a company may have. And that starts firstly on your website, right? That's the epicenter for your brand, and that's where everyone goes. So having not just having a great website, but also having a really well thought out user experience, and then making sure that you do have an investor center, an investor corner, a page, a portal for investors that delivers the key numbers and the information they need to evaluate their investment in your company on a regular basis, but also communicates messages, also shares stories about how your brand is making an impact to people's lives, to the planet, to the environment, and to their bottom line. So an investor center, and an investor portal is very important. It's not just to deliver your announcements or your share price, or your recent appointments of directors, but it's also to connect with investors on a level where it goes beyond just, I like this company, I like the brand. It should be, I really believe in this team. I really believe in the management and their vision of why they show up to work every day. So it is a deeper level of connection that you have to build with investors. So clear messaging, embedded across all your channels, your websites, your social media, your investor webinars, your investor days, investor updates. All of these are brand touch points for companies, for you to be able to build really strong relationships with your current investors. And those really well built relationship with current investors then give way for word of mouth, which is still by far the strongest marketing tool there, and they will attract more. And that's usually how most of humans work. Hey, I really like this, I think they're brilliant, you should check them out. And I think it's hard to measure, which makes it an underrated tool to tap into. For a company, I think it is also important for companies to have uh, a good finger on the pulse when it comes to investor sentiment, not just for the investors that are invested in the company, but in that space that investors are existing in. What is the market sentiment? What is the investor sentiment? And this is where your stakeholders involved as a company, you should be tapping into all these different channels for you to be able to understand, or the management to be able to understand, how does the market see the company? Because regardless of everything you do and everything you say, the perception of the market, of your company, of your management, of your brand is also important to acknowledge and leverage, really. Overall, if companies are ticking off all these boxes, then the investors will show. The investors will come, because the existing investors are going to be out there saying, man, this company is great. The management is really awesome. I believe in them, and they're very transparent. And I feel like I truly am a shareholder in the company, and to achieve that outcome, I think is the ultimate paramount goal of every investor relation strategy and every company that wants to attract and retain robust investors.
Well, thanks, Amit, for today. These answers were very insightful, and we look forward to getting you back soon.
Thanks, Donna. I'll definitely be back. Now, I've covered a lot, and if you're thinking, this is a lot to soak in, that's exactly what my team and I are here for. So reach out to us. Let's start the conversation, and let's make driving investor confidence the key theme for 2024.